Hey there. Um, I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you to feel sorry for me because that's not what this is about. My name is Tschritter. I'm an author. I wrote Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms. I also wrote a poetry book about grief. And this channel is to talk to people who have experienced grief in different ways and need that support of someone who's been where they are. I'm also doing a 3-day unfiltered challenge, which you're you're getting a lot of bang for your buck here because I'm in my pajamas. I'm not wearing makeup. This video will not be edited. This video will not be edited. That's where we are. Great. And also, we have the added bonus of my kids being home from school. Um, there are pets running around all over the place. So here we are. Here is life with me. Um, and I should have taken a chair out of the frame. I'll just do this. Um, so, like I said, um, I consider myself an expert griever in a lot of ways. I have experienced 3 miscarriages. My husband passed away when I was 38 years old. He was 38 years old from cancer, and I I had to deal with that. I've also lost friends, friends who fought in the military, friends who've died in different ways, and I have a physical disability. And what I've learned about grief is that there are tons of different ways that people grieve. It's not just, oh, the death of a loved one. Divorce is actually ranked more highly than the death of a loved one in some ways. Um, And so I'm going to talk about the different types of grief. I'm going to talk about um, kind of what I want this channel to be because what's in it for you? People ask me that all the time, like, what's in it for your viewer or why are you doing this? And they ask me, well, like, what did you want when you were grieving? And I'm like, I didn't want tips or tricks. I just wanted to look at another human who had experienced what I experienced and survived it. Um, when I became a widow, especially, I was like, there have been widows and widowers for centuries. How have I not ever heard about their struggle? Like how bad it hurts. I think just until you experience something yourself, there's no way to understand the depth of that grief, of that loss. Um, I felt like when my husband died, I felt like it was as close to dying as I could possibly have come without dying myself because my identity was tangled up in who he was. I was his wife, I was a pastor's wife. We had 3 children together, 3 daughters together. We had all these private moments with just the two of us, like personal jokes and memories. And the marriage ended for him till death do us part, right? And so he passed away. I was next to him when he died. He passed away and went to heaven, and the marriage ended for him in that moment, but it didn't end for me immediately because I had all these pieces of myself that were woven into who he was. And so, like, I felt like part of like he took part of me to heaven with him, and I was left with half of myself. I was left to figure out who I was, um, and I it was really, really, really tough to grieve that loss and also, like, support my kids while they were grieving the same loss because I was just a mess. And so when people ask me, like, "What did you want?" I wanted to talk to other widows, and I just wanted other people to go through I didn't want other people to go through what I'd gone through, but I wanted to talk to other people who'd been through what I'd been through. Some of the benefits of I've been there, and I'm gonna look at notes every once in a while, but, um, just the ability to say, I know how the ability to say, "I know how you feel," without saying, "I know how you feel," because those are really hard words to hear. Every story is different. Um, but, like, just someone who knows how you feel, right? Someone who, um who can tell you that all the strange, weird things that you're thinking or feeling are normal because they felt them too. I wanted to hear that my grief was survivable for sure, and that I wasn't always going to be in the place that I was in. And then the other thing about it, been there, that was really important, been there, BEEN, been there, someone who's been there. One thing about a been there that I loved was just that they took time for me. And even the fact that we were able to stand together in the same spot and have these conversations, like they stopped their lives in order to help me through my grief. And that said a lot. That said that my pain was worth their time and their attention. My struggles were worthy to be heard. And so I think that's one of the most beneficial things that we can hear as a griever, is just someone who's been where we are. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about too is people who were grieving in the Bible. Like Job is probably the most famous griever. He sat in his pain, he experienced all these things, and his friends came and hung out with him and tried to talk to him, and they didn't get it. They didn't understand what he was thinking or feeling. They disagreed with him. And at first they did it right. They sat with him in silence, but when they finally spoke, they weren't coming at it from the space of a griever, because they couldn't. And so they said a lot of really hurtful, painful things to Job, accusing him of sin, and like, what sin have you committed that you are, that God is calling you out on this? And that wasn't what happened. Interestingly enough, I looked at Jesus' life, and I looked at Jesus' life particularly right before he died. Oh, here. So I have my coffee I'm going to drink, and I also have this cute little pot holder. So a little trick, if you're ever doing a Facebook Live, you put the pot holder down, and then when you put your mug down, you don't hear the thump on the video. Something I learned back when I was a percussion student in high school. So we had to put the tambourine back down on a table and rattle. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. Jesus' grief. Jesus knew he was going to die. Jesus was grieving the loss of his life, and he wanted to die for our sins, but also the human part of him did not want to go through what he was going to go through, and what human would, right? Luke 22:42, Jesus says, Father, take this cup from me. Like, take my death away from me. Yet not my will, yours be done. So Jesus, we know that he was really struggling. We know that he suffered to the point that he was so stressed that he was sweating blood. Like he was really, really struggling. And he brought his three closest friends up to the mountain with him to pray. They didn't really get it. They didn't really know what was going on. I don't think they understood how close Jesus was to being killed and to the end of his death. And I wish we could have an inside look at that, or like go back and ask them, would you have done it differently if you knew that he was going to die? Would you have tried to stay awake for him? Because 3 times in Matthew 26, Jesus, he's going away to pray, and then he goes back to his friends, maybe for encouragement or support, to try to talk things through. These weren't just disciples. These were his 3 closest friends. And so 3 different times in Matthew 26, we have this reference of, like, sit here while I go over there to pray. And then he returned to his disciples, and they were, could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour? When he came back again, he found them sleeping in verse 40, 43, 44. And then again in verse 45, are you still sleeping and resting? So here's my Bible. I've had it for a while. Jesus just wanted someone to be with him in his grief, and he didn't have been there. Jesus was alone in the last hours of his life. God the Father was with him until, like, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? Um, but his friends, his human friends that were walking alongside him, failed him. And so my heart's desire is for this channel to be a safe place where people can come and they can share their own grief. Like, if you are grieving the loss of something, I would love to hear in the comments what you're grieving, right? Because we're going to talk about different types of grief. So if I name these different ways in which people grieve and I don't list the manner in which you are grieving or the thing that you're grieving over, please feel free to add it in the comments. But I really want this place to be somewhere safe where people can come and gather and grieve together and support one another and be real and honest about the things that we're facing. Um, a lot of people ask me why I wrote love letters to miscarriage moms, and one of the reasons I state is because I wanted to validate the experience. I wanted to validate the loss. And there are so many aspects of miscarriage. It's not just that miscarriage is not talked about. It is becoming more and more common to talk about miscarriage, but the things that happen during miscarriage are not talked about. So, um, like, when you are actually losing the baby, the physical process, a woman is passing clumps of tissue and clumps of blood. And it's really nasty and gross and terrifying. It's terrifying. Feels like you're dying because you are losing so much blood. Um, and that's not something that people talk about. And so I wrote love letters to miscarriage moms to talk about the hard things that go unsaid in a lot of different contexts, and just to help people to be aware, like, this is what it's like. This is what she's struggling with. This is how it feels. And the second version I wrote, my new love letters to miscarriage moms, has input from over 40 moms and dads, not just about miscarriage, but stillbirth and infertility and early infant loss. Because again, like, infertility is its own kind of grief, because you're grieving you're grieving a dream that didn't happen. I said earlier that I believe grief is as close to a person can come without dying. Like, it hurts a lot. But grief is also the unfulfillment of a dream that someone has. And so anytime you have a job loss or divorce, um, you aren't able to have kids, or you're not able to carry a child to full term, or you have a child with a disability, or your child comes out with a sexual orientation that you're not prepared for. Anytime we have an idea of what we want life to be, and then it doesn't turn out to be that, that's grief. A job promotion that we were hoping to get, but we didn't get, a move across the country, a move into a new house. Hold on, I wrote some other things down. Like, people who are adopted or trying to find their place, moving to a new school, trying to find new friends, even voting day is tomorrow. Even if your political party does not win the election, there's grief there. And so there are a lot of different types of grief that go unnoticed, or they don't get as much attention as a parent who loses a child, or as a spouse whose husband or wife dies. And so, comment below if you've experienced something that was just really rough for you, because here's what I know: you're not the only one that's gone through it. You're not the only one that's struggling with it. And other people will benefit from your transparency and your vulnerability. That is a word that I would edit out if I was not doing my unfiltered challenge here. Vulnerability. Um, that's why I'm here. And my losses were not so long ago that I don't remember how much they hurt. And I've done a lot of journaling and writing, so I do remember that pain. But I've moved far enough beyond the pain that I am able to talk about the things I talk about without crying. I'm able to talk about the miscarriages without crying, which just puts me in a little better place to be able to minister to other people because, like I said, I don't want you to pity me. That's not what this is about. And if sometimes when people are trying to share but they're crying, the sharing is overshadowed um, by the feeling that we feel sorry for the person who's sharing. And that's not what I want to happen. But I do, like in my case, but I want this to be a safe place for people who come and they just want to been there. They just want someone who's experienced it. And the other thing people ask me a lot is, because I watch these videos, right, about finding your niche and catering to your niche and speaking to your niche or niche, however you want to say it. And they're like, well, who is your target audience? People who grieve. But that's not a demographic. That's not women between 35 and 40 of a certain racial descent. It's everyone. Everyone grieves. Everyone will grieve. Everyone knows someone who is grieving, or you will know someone who is grieving. And so if you have insight to what that feels like or how to help a person in grief, that's a valuable resource and I can help with that. But then how do I define my demographic? It's everyone. It's everyone, but it's not always everyone all the time. And one of the things I have, one of my playlists is Laughter Heals. And the Laughter Heals playlist has nothing to do with grief necessarily. It's just jokes about my real life and like basically dumb things that my daughters say. I'm going to do a reel. My daughter picked up my phone and she started texting herself photos from my phone. And then her phone was in her bag on the floor of the car. And she heard her text notifications going off. She's like, who's texting me? Who's texting me? I was like, so that's what the Laughter Heals reels are for. That is just like when you come to this channel, but you don't want to get into the heavy, hard stuff about grief, you can skip on over to Laughter Heals and just watch those. I'm going to have to market that as Laughter Heals reels. Anyway, and that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing is talking to people about grief. I don't know. So one thing, I guess, I spent a lot of time in October talking about miscarriage because it was Infant Loss Awareness Month. But I also will talk about just grief in general. I'll talk about what it feels like to be a widow and different things I experienced. And actually, judgment is one of those surprising things that you experience in grief because you make choices and you say things and people judge you for them. But they're not in your shoes, so they don't know. But I experienced a lot of crazy situations that I was judged for. My late husband was an alcoholic. And so I will talk into the prodigal story, the prodigal journey of grief and what it's like to be married to an addict and the family member of an addict and how that feels. The other thing I mentioned was having a physical disability. And so I have cerebral palsy. I'm a writer. God called me to be a writer, and I have one working hand. This is my left hand, so it's like switched on camera, but my right hand doesn't work. So I type with all one hand. God called someone who has one working hand to be an author and write books, which is hilarious and a story for another time. So make sure you hit subscribe so that you get to hear some of these stories that I'm talking about and you don't miss out on them. Welcome. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks.